Hey there, Scary Parrish. Sunday, March 13th, 2022. Welcome back to the CBS Sports Eye on College Basketball Podcast, where we sometimes discuss camel fighting, dodo birds, and leaky black. Matt Norlander is here with me. Happy Selection Sunday. If you're watching on YouTube, hey YouTube, please smash that like button like you're Brandon Davies. It helps us. You're not risking anything. That dude risked a Final Four. You're not risking anything. Smash the like button. We got a bracket. Once again, they put 68 teams in it. Dead leg. How's your night been so far?
Well, it's been a night, but we started the podcast on time. For those watching on YouTube, please do smash that like button. This is
like Brandon Davies.
Exactly. And if you are listening to this, this is the most listened to podcast we do the entire year. Thanks to everyone who's stopping by. I assure you, if this is the one you're coming for, you are going to want to subscribe. We have an amazing inventory of podcasts and content coming for you throughout the tournament, particularly, though, on Monday, Tuesdays, we lead up to the games there. It's been a night, though. I'm going to put forth right now, as we get ready to talk about this bracket, what we like, what we don't like. Let's just not mention that guy. Let's just move on from it. The dude tried to take over the entire night. It's completely unnecessary. Never been more irrationally spiteful of a person I've never met in my life. Don't even mention his name. I'm just bringing it up now. Let's move on. Let's talk about the bracket. Let's get this going.
His name is Tom Brady. How about this? So we're out on set doing a show, and I come back into the bullpen, and I'd gotten text messages from like friends, like Tom Brady, ha 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 ha, and I'm like, what are they even talking about? And it's probably Tom Brady had been unretired for at least 30 minutes before I was even aware of it. What a wild story that is! But it cannot take away from Selection Sunday.
That's correct. And by the way, I'm seeing the live chat saying there might have been an echo. I enabled the mix minus. Go ahead and let us know in the live chat if that echo is now gone. I hear nothing in my ears, but I want to be helping. I want to be helping our live viewers on YouTube as well. And let's get into it, man. How's your night been? And what are your initial thoughts? How do you want to get rolling here on this Selection Sunday?
Well, we did a 3-hour television show on CBS Sports Network. I competed with Chris Walker in jump ball. Pete Gillen was the judge. I beat him 2-1. I think it felt more like 3-0, but I still walked away as the champion of jump ball on Selection Sunday. Brent Stover called me, and I can't speak for Stover, but he called me the MVP of the show. The number one seeds are Gonzaga, Arizona, Kansas, Baylor. On Saturday night, you and I, Kyle Boone, David Cobb, were asked to predict what the number one seeds would be, and you and I had it exactly this way: Gonzaga, Arizona, Kansas, Baylor. So the question would be, did the selection committee get it right? But I know what your answer is going to be, and that's yes, they did.
Yeah, not much to say here on the one seed thing overall. They got it right. I think it was as expected, and we had some drama elsewhere on the 2 and the 3 line that we'll get to, obviously around the cut line. I'd actually be interested. I know you don't know this. I'm just kind of thinking out loud in real time here.
I know everything.
Okay, then who got 68 for 68? Who nailed the bracket?
I'm not sure.
Okay. All right. You usually like to hop on this podcast and say, I got 68 out of 68 or 67 out of 68.
I did. I wanted to do it today. I didn't have time. I would have gotten 67 out of 68, though. If I would have tweeted.
Sure.
No, I would have. I would have had Texas A&M in and Notre Dame out. Because I had thought through it and done all. I just never got a chance to actually put it in a file and tweet it. I'm being honest. Why would I lie about it at this point? I would have gotten 67 out of 68. I don't know how I would have been on this seed match this seed and that seed match that seed. But where I would have missed, and the only place I would have missed, was I would have had A&M in and Notre Dame out.
Okay, we'll get to the bubble stuff in a second. Just wrapping up the one seed talk. As I look at this, and if you're watching on YouTube, I mean, just gorgeous.
Hey,
gorgeous, beautiful bracket here. Gonzaga out west, Baylor in the east, which I thought would be the case. Arizona to the south, Kansas to the Midwest. Also, where they're going is not surprising to me. Kansas gets the easiest path potentially to a Final Four. If you really look, Auburn's been swooning a bit as a 2. Wisconsin, plenty of people say maybe it had the resume to be a 3, but predicted metrics, it's outside the top 30 and multiple ones. Providence as the 4. Wisconsin and Providence are kind of 2 eggs in the same basket, if you will. And then Iowa's a 5 is actually a legitimate challenge. Iowa's the best 5 on the board as far as I'm concerned at this point. But elsewhere, I think Kansas has the easiest potential 8-9 winner if it were to move on there. So good job by the committee with the 1 seeds, but it wasn't hard. They got that done. And as we'll get to with some of these other teams we're going to talk about, Gonzaga, Arizona, Kansas, Baylor, what do they all have in common? None of them played on Sunday. A lot of things that we're going to talk about here deal with conference tournaments that wrapped up on Sunday and how little those results and even playing the games seem to matter.
The only thing that I thought could disrupt what the 4 number 1 seeds ended up being would have been the committee deciding to ding Baylor because LJ Cryer has only played 1 game since January 25th and hasn't played at all since February 16th. Reasonable people can debate who is Baylor's best player, but this is a fact. He is Baylor's leading scorer, and he has not played in a long time. And on CBS Sports Network earlier in the night, I pointed out that there is precedent for this. If you do not believe that LJ Cryer is going to be available, and I think Baylor intelligently has just consistently listed him as a game time decision because they have never wanted to speak definitively about his injury because you don't want it to be held against you. But if you go back to the 2000 season, Cincinnati heading into championship week was so clearly the best team in the country. And then inside of a pyramid that is now a Bass Pro Shop pyramid, Kenny Martin in the conference tournament suffered a season-ending injury. Based on the resume that Cincinnati had, they should have still been a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. But the committee said, you don't have your best player anymore, so we're going to make you a 2. I thought that there was a chance the committee could do that with Baylor, especially when, and we'll get to this in a minute, you look at what Tennessee's resume now is, but ultimately they decided we're going to respect Baylor's body of work without context, and that leads to Gonzaga, Arizona, Kansas, and Baylor as the number 1 seeds. It looked like the most controversial thing at the top of the bracket was Duke getting a number 2 seed over Tennessee. If you look at the resumes, that doesn't make much sense. And we're going to discuss that next. But before we go any further, real quick, let me remind you about our bracket challenge game. We want you to compete with us. So please do. I'm going to be in it. Norlander, Kyle Boone, David Cobb, and who knows who else will join us. But we want you to join us. CBSSports.com/CBS Eye on Brackets. That's the link. CBSSports.com/CBS Eye on Brackets. The winner's going to get a $100 gift card to Paramount Plus, which could come in handy because you're able to watch NCAA tournament games on Paramount Plus, plus tons of soccer from the Champions League, golf majors in the spring, NFL football in the fall. Beyond that, Halo going to be streaming starting March 24th exclusively on Paramount Plus. So head to ParamountPlus.com/Halo if you want to try that for free. In the meantime, enter our bracket challenge game. And don't stop there. You can also create a group to compete against friends or enemies. Compete against your enemies. That's fun too. You can fill out a bracket for a chance to win a trip to the 2023 Final Four. And this is the best part, it's all free. Nobody's charging you a penny. Again, you can play on the CBS Sports app or at CBSSports.com/CBS Eye on Brackets. That's /CBS EYE on Brackets. All right, dead leg. Tennessee, number 3 seed. Duke, number 2 seed. Can you make sense of that?
No, I can't. As if you're watching live here, I'm coming to you from our CBS Sports HQ studios, podcast studio here. Shouts to Ryan Wilson. He's done many a Pick 6 episode here after a Sunday Night Football deal. And when I was on HQ earlier in real time, I saw Villanova was a 2. Didn't think Nova was going to wind up being a 2. But the internet is not out in Philadelphia. They got it. The Nova fans found me. So I'm going to straight up apologize and atone for my comment there, because Duke is clearly Duke is more in dispute for the 2 line than Villanova. There's no doubt about that. But I want to say, and I could be misremembering this as well, because I went on the air at 5:30 and was on basically, except for the you know what, I was on until 10:50 at night. So I want to say Duke wasn't in the field yet when I made that tweet, but then again, maybe it was. Duke's the one in dispute. There is no, you got the data. I'm going to just lay this out for you because everyone knows this is the case. And I did, by the way, I interviewed, we had a whole interview scheduled for HQ. I was going to, first time in my career, get to interview the selection chair on the air. I was ready. Well, that went out the window, but we did squeeze in a 7-minute interview that is on the Eye on College Basketball YouTube channel that you can go watch. And I did directly ask Tom Burnett about the Tennessee situation. He answered it decently. I wasn't completely satisfied with the answer. I guess there is no really, giving anyone an answer that's satisfactory, but there's no defense for this. You could actually make a better case for Tennessee to be the number 1-2 seed than you could for them to be the number 1-3 seed. And in the overall seed order, and then take it away after this, GP, the overall seed order got released, and this is how it goes. It goes Gonzaga, Arizona, Kansas, Baylor, then Auburn, UK, Nova, Duke. Then it's Wisconsin before you get to the Vols at 11. Purdue and Texas Tech round out the top 12. You can't make a case for it. And I don't understand how the committee got to this point other than the obvious. When you look at A&M not getting in the field, Tennessee winning the SEC tournament, this tournament even more than the Big Ten anyone. Like the SEC championship, it never means anything. The SEC, if it wants to better its case going forward, I'm serious, move your final to Saturday. Don't hold it on Sundays anymore. Give people the data so they can really understand just how badly the committee goofed up on this by putting Tennessee on a 3-line.
Well, on Bracket Breakdown on CBS Sports Network, we had selection committee member Dr. Chris Reynolds, the athletic director at Bradley, who's going to be the committee chair next season. And I asked him, Tennessee is 16-7 in the first 2 quadrants, 0 losses outside of quadrant 1, undefeated at home. That's clearly, in my mind, a top 8 resume in the country. But Tennessee only got a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament. I said, Dr. Reynolds, with all due respect, that seems to reinforce the perception that things that happen on Sunday afternoon don't matter to the bracket. How would you respond to that? And he talked for, a little while, and he didn't really answer the question, which I didn't expect him to, because that's a tough question to ask. Typically if people are asking you questions that are rooted in, hey, I think you got this wrong, the only reason we're asking it, or at least the only reason I'm asking it, is because it's clear to me you got it wrong, and I want to hear you try to defend it. And more often than not, you can't. Again, Dr. Reynolds, really smart guy, but there's no great way to defend it. Let me just run you through it real quick. Because earlier on Sunday, our friend Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News, tweeted that, something along the lines of, hey, I think I'm out here a little bit by myself, but if Tennessee beats Texas A&M and wins this SEC tournament, I don't see how Tennessee's not going to be a 2 seed. And I retweeted it and pointed out that on Sunday morning, I had Tennessee ranked 6th in the top 25-1, which doubles as, the second number 2 seed. And spoiler alert, when I update the top 25-1 for the final time, oh, woo! Looking forward to that.
Okay.
Woo! Imagine doing something every day since early November. Every day. Every day. And now after I do it one more time, I never have to do it again. I feel like I'm getting at it. This must be what it feels like to get out of prison. When you got one more day of prison.
Okay.
I feel like this must be what it feels like to get out of prison. Boy, when I hit send on the top 25-1 one more time. Oh,
yeah. Andy Dufresne. Yeah, I got you.
This must be what it's like to walk out of federal prison. So, spoiler alert, I will have Tennessee 5th in the final top 25-1. And I could make an argument that they are way closer to being the 4th number 1 than they are being a number 3 seed. 11-7 in quadrant 1, 5-0 in quadrant 2, 16-7 in the first 2 quadrants. 0 losses outside of quadrant 1, undefeated at home. Now, I don't expect you to remember all that, so I'll run back through it after I tell you what Duke is. Duke, 6-2 in quadrant 1, 6-3 in quadrant 2. So 12-5 in the first 2 quadrants, and they've got a quadrant 3 loss. So that means a total of 4 losses outside of the first quadrant. Tennessee has 0. So Tennessee has 5 more quadrant 1 wins than Duke. They have 0 losses outside of the first quadrant. Duke has 4. Check this out. Duke, and I give credit to Jerry Palm, he pointed this out. I'm just stealing it from him. Duke has more losses outside of the first quadrant than the other 3 2 seeds combined,
No.
plus Tennessee.
No.
You ready
No.
for this?
No.
Duke has 4 losses outside of quadrant 1. Auburn has 0. Kentucky has 0. 2 seed Villanova has 1. And 3 seed Tennessee has 0.
There's only one takeaway from that then. Had Duke beaten Virginia Tech, they'd be the number 1 overall seed in this tournament.
It's outrageous. There is no way to defend that. And I am not somebody who's like, oh, they're always looking out for Duke and they're always trying to take care of Duke and blah, blah, blah. I don't subscribe to that stuff. But there is no way to defend Duke over Tennessee. 0 chance. Tennessee has 5 more quadrant 1 wins and Duke has 4 more losses outside of the first quadrant. What are we doing?
I mean, I can't tell you, man. This is brutal. Here's what I thought about in between segments and stuff down in the studio. I'm not going to make we should be critiquing the committee here. This is not going to be 60 minutes of us bashing the committee. Actually, I think in recent years, if memory serves, last year, obviously no 20 tournament, maybe 19. We've started this podcast a couple times saying, you know what? Yeah, a little quibble here, a little quibble there, but the committee's done its job. This feels like there are a couple decisions here that put them ripe for ribbing more than we've seen in a while. And my biggest issue is that, Tennessee should not be on the 3 line. There's no justification for it. And everyone knows it. Everyone knows it, right? But Tennessee gets benefited, I guess, by playing close in Indianapolis and then going to San Antonio. Whereas if it was a 2, if it was the 2 where Duke is the 2, and I haven't even figured out if the bracketing would have allowed for that. But if it was the 2 where Duke is the 2, then it goes to Greenville, which would have been fine. Then it goes to San Francisco. So I don't know if you'd rather be the 3 than the 2 in that instance. I prefer to put teams on the seed lines where they belong. Tennessee was a big misfire, and we have talked about this issue on the podcast near annually for as long as we've done it. All I ask is that it feels like the committee, it convenes on a Wednesday and it grinds and hashes out and seed scrubs and ballots are in and all this Wednesday into Thursday into Friday into Saturday. We get updates frequently. Dave Warlock does a phenomenal job on Twitter, kind of giving updates about here's how many teams are in the field. He even said at one point there was a 5-way tie when the anonymous voting went in as they were trying to put teams in the at-large pool. But it just feels like they get their work done sometime around 2:30 a.m. on a Saturday. Sometimes it goes later than that. And they basically have an assortment of all right, here's the seed, barring a Richmond situation that happened on Sunday. This is our order. We're not going to allow for one more game, one more data point to affect how we're going to seed these teams when I think it actually does matter. If you win your conference tournament championship, depending on the conference, depending on the situation, it should matter. And so many of these Sunday results just simply don't. Now, there's never going to be a situation where the committee and, CBS and the NCAA are going to say, you know what, we just won't play any games on Selection Sunday. We're just going to wait and build up to a 6:00 show. It's a ramp up. I get all that. I just want the committee to better account for this. The bracketing process, the seeding process, I still feel like sometimes it comes off a bit messy, a bit rushed. But I will also say this. Burnett alluded to this when I talked to him briefly. Keep in mind that there could have easily been a situation. The committee has to take it on the whole, but there could have been a situation where the way that the votes came out, there could have been 5 people that put Tennessee clearly on a 2 and 7 who put it on a 3, or however the vote breakdown broke. And you've got people on this committee who are like, there's no shot. I've got Tennessee on the 2 line, but the majority wound up winning, or the plurality, I should say, wound up winning out, putting Tennessee on the 3. And so we have it. It's not the biggest crime in the world, obviously. It's just so glaring. And I foolishly tweeted earlier in the day, I tweeted that I had the faith that if Tennessee won the SEC tournament, its past behavior for the committee was not going to be repeated. John Calipari was on this 12 years ago. He's been right the whole time. Tennessee should be a 2 instead of a 3, but so it goes. We'll see how they respond. There's a lot of teams that are walking into this bracket playing pretty well, and Tennessee's on that list of like top 3 or 4 in terms of like really strutting into this thing. And we'll see if I don't know how much motivation that those players will have for being a 3 instead of a 2. Maybe it's more of a media thing and a fan thing, but it's it just damages your credibility. That's all. Not the worst thing, but it's certainly something we had to address near the top here.
Yeah. And let me state the obvious, because the obvious isn't always so obvious for everybody. I don't care what happens now that when this tournament starts. Like, Duke goes to the Final Four, Tennessee loses its second round game. None of that has anything to do with where these teams should have been seated today. And we keep making it a Tennessee Duke thing. Could also be a Tennessee Kentucky thing. Tennessee's got a better resume than Kentucky, and went 2-1 against them this season. There's really not a great argument for Kentucky over Tennessee either, unless you just want to point straight to KenPom and just keep pointing and keep pointing. Or if you want to say, but Ty missed this game and Xavier Wheeler was out for this game. But, Tennessee took one of its losses without Kennedy Chandler, who was the MVP of the SEC tournament. He, of course, is my little homie from Memphis. So, that to me was the most blatant mistake. Is it the biggest deal in the world? No, I don't guess not. You're a 3 instead of a 2. But I'm a big believer in get it right. And this is something they so obviously got wrong. We will get to the bottom of the bracket next, or at least the final at-large bids. Teams that barely got in, teams that got left out. But first, a word from our sponsors.
The only way you survive this is working together, leaning on each other. This trip ain't even got hard yet, but hard's coming.
Tell anybody who listens that you lived through hell.
It wasn't hell, Daddy. It was beautiful.
1883. All episodes now streaming exclusively on Paramount Plus.
All right, let's talk about the final at-large bids and the teams that got left out. The first 4 is going to be Rutgers against Notre Dame and Indiana against Wyoming. That's the first 4. They're the last 4 teams in the field. That means Texas A&M got left out. Xavier got left out. Somewhat surprisingly, Dayton was the first team out. Not surprised Dayton was out. I didn't think Dayton had a chance. Turns out Dayton was in the field as long as Richmond didn't upset Davidson in the title game of the A-10 tournament. That's one basically every bracketologist would have missed on if it would have gone down that way. You got any issue with what they did? Final at-large bids, teams that they left out.
Again, I understand. You can say, well, these are teams that aren't going to go far anyway. So it's not always true. In fact, in most years, one of the first 4 teams wins at least a first round game. Obviously, UCLA went first 4 to Final Four, and VCU did that in the first year we had this format back in 2011. Texas A&M was the team that most people projected had done enough to get in. Yet again, where was Texas A&M? SEC championship game just didn't matter. So here we are. Dayton, how about that, man? How about those Flyers unknowingly being in? Dayton was in the field on Saturday night, man. And then their own conference brethren, the Spiders, did them in. By the way, side note, Richmond's not a 12. Like, put them on the 13 line. South Dakota State should be a 12, but whatever. But Dayton was, and then they get knocked out. So the A-10 was always destined for 2 bids. No one knew it. I said this on HQ. I think I said it on the podcast. To me, there was so much variety in the bubble teams' resumes that we were bound to get contradictory results, and I'm okay with that. Texas A&M overall, surprising to me that it wasn't I thought it was in, and it wasn't even the first team out. 4-10 quad 1, not great. 5-0 quad 2, really good. 5-2 quad 3, 8-0 in quad 4. Away from home, it was 10-8, above 500 record there. It's metrics. Net ranking, KenPom, BPI, 45 or better. KPI was 53. I thought it had done enough, but it doesn't get in. And so I'm not crying foul for any of the teams that did. I don't think anyone got. I will say this. A&M is surprising that it didn't get in. There have been years where there are teams that have not. And if you're an A&M fan, I get it. Like, you're furious, although your team just played its way into this thing like a few days ago. But I get it. There have been years where there's been a team or two that's been left out, and it's like, what are we doing? how do you how do you possibly justify doing that? I don't get that this year. Although I will say, GP, my man, this first four, Indiana squeaking in. I guess I convinced myself once it beat Illinois that it was going to be enough. And then Rutgers, and then Wyoming. I thought Wyoming wasn't going to Dayton. There were some that were on that. I want to say Palm was on that.
Here's the thing. The Mountain West Conference was going to get 4 teams. One of them was going to Dayton.
The only one that was even obviously up possibly to get there. I agree.
I said that earlier in the week. I was like, the Mountain West is getting 4, and one of them will end up in Dayton, guaranteed.
You nailed it. I love the Rutgers. So Notre Dame, in my opinion, has got no business being in this field. It just doesn't. It might be harder to justify putting Notre Dame in this field than it is to justify putting Tennessee on the 3 line, and that's saying something. But again, not good on Mike Bray. They get back in and all that. But Rutgers versus Notre Dame, you want to talk about 2 glaringly different resumes. I do like the fact that they paired them against each other. Winner that's going to play Alabama in the West. Rutgers, you and I were on the same page. We thought Rutgers would get punished because it rated so lowly in every single metric comparatively. But at the end of the day, and there's no saying that this will be consistent 3 years from now when most of the people on this committee won't be on this committee anymore. But it's basically this. Rutgers had more good wins by far than any other team that was on the bubble. Not close. It also had things weighing its resume down to an extent that no other team was really having to deal with and had that kind of hanging over its head. They went with the team that could, prove to have gotten the wins, and so they were in. But again, there are inconsistencies. Oklahoma, to a certain degree, had this as well. Oklahoma out 3 games above 500. Oklahoma 18-15, 4 quad 1 wins, 6-2 in quad 2, only 1 quad 3 loss. Yet Michigan gets in. It's not even going to Dayton. So yes, there are some inconsistencies. I'm just thrilled we got a bracket, man. I'm awesome. I'm just happy to be talking to you about this. I think overall the committee I'll give it a B overall. The first 4 games are super fascinating because not just because of the matchups and the styles, but because of the teams that will win and the potential, 6-11, 5-12s that might be awaiting them. What about your thoughts on the teams that didn't get in versus who did?
Well, first on the first 4, you mentioned Michigan doesn't even have to go to Dayton. When I was sort of just going through and at seed line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, just ranking, taking the top 25 and 1 and then expanding it. My initial draft had Rutgers, Indiana, and Michigan in the first 4 based on if I'm just ranking teams. My understanding is they couldn't do that. Even if they wanted to, they can't do it because I think the rule, correct me if I'm wrong. You're usually better about this stuff than I am. You can't play somebody in the first 4 that you already played in the regular season.
That's my understanding.
Right. So Big Ten teams, you can't put 3 Big Ten teams in the first 4, even if you think that's where they belong, because by definition, that means 2 of them got to play each other. And that runs contrary to the bracketing principles. So either Rutgers, Indiana, or Michigan, if they're going to be in the bracket, they've got to go in the bracket because you could at most have 2 Big Ten teams in the first 4. I'm with you on Notre Dame. I don't think that team should have been in. I said earlier, the one miss I would have had in terms of teams in and out, I had Texas A&M in, Notre Dame out. Notre Dame is 2-8 in quadrant 1, 2-1 in quadrant 2.
How about that, man? Dude, I thought that exact same thing at about like 4:00 this afternoon when I was trying to just put my bracket together. I was like, these dudes played 3 quad 2 games? 3?
So they're 4-9 in the first 2 quadrants. 5 games under 500 in the first 2 quadrants with an additional loss in quadrant 3. 17 of their 21 wins came in either quadrant 3 or quadrant 4. There's nothing there. They got a win over Kentucky. There's nothing else there. And let me be clear. I'm happy for Mike Bray. Everybody likes Mike Bray. I'm happy for Mike Bray, but take that, put it aside. That's not an NCAA tournament resume. Let's go to Texas A&M. 4-10 in quadrant 1, 5-0 in quadrant 2. So 9-10 in the first 2 quadrants. I just told you Notre Dame's 5 games under 500 in the first 2 quadrants. Texas A&M is only 1 game below 500 in the first 2 quadrants, and they got twice as many quadrant 1 wins. They do have 2 quarter 3 losses. I'm not ignoring them, but I still think it's a better resume than Notre Dame's. Also, if you care about the computers, Texas A&M is better than Notre Dame in the net, KenPom, BPI, Sagarin, KPI, Torvik. All of them. Beats them in every computer. And I'll take it a step further, and this apparently wasn't even close. I'd have Xavier in before I had Notre Dame, man. And I know Xavier spiraled. I'm not trying to argue. I'm not trying to argue Xavier's one of the best at-large candidates now in its current form, but that's not supposed to be what this is about. It's supposed to be about bodies of work. And Xavier is 5-8 in quadrant 1, 4-3 in quadrant 2, so 9-11 in the first 2 quadrants with 2 quadrant 3 losses. I would not have Xavier in over Texas A&M, but I'd have Xavier in over Notre Dame.
I would too. And when you say that, I gave him a B. I might have to drop that down to B- or C+, because the more, like, I don't know, man. And I don't know if this is, I don't know what this is a function of. They look at record. The Kentucky win obviously like puts it over the top. In terms of overall seeding, by the way, as we get down to the cut line with bubble teams, here's how it shook out. From 40 on down: 40 Davidson, 41 Iowa State. Vexing. I actually think Iowa State's playing like an 11 seed. I'm gonna need someone to explain to me how Iowa State's resume puts them on the 11 line. Michigan at 42, Wyoming 43, Rutgers 44, ahead of Indiana, ahead of Virginia Tech. I asked the committee chair if Virginia Tech needed to win to get, basically if it lost, it wouldn't have been in. This tells me yes. He didn't answer that directly. The answer is yes. If Virginia Tech did not beat Duke, it would not have gotten in. Notre Dame, the final team into the field, and then you get to the other teams that are all along the line, UAB 48, Richmond 49, et cetera, et cetera. The process, I'm not going to say the process is broken because I don't believe that it is. And mostly the bracket looks pretty good. But there are just some of these voting collective decisions, GP. I don't know. Like Notre Dame in the field, I would have had him the 4th or 5th team out. So whatever. Again, there's no one that's out that absolutely had to be in. If you want to say that Notre Dame's in and it absolutely had to be out, I'm here to listen to that case. It's really the only team that I think that's the case. I also will, if you like, I'm a guy where the losses should matter, loss volume and context of the losses. Rutgers, what do you want from me?
Well, Rutgers is a team that when it lost in the Big Ten tournament, I said, I don't think they're going to make it. Yeah. As we got to Selection Sunday and I started comparing them to the other teams that I've got to choose between, I liked what they had in the first quadrant in terms of victories. And I said, at least this team has shown the ability to beat good teams. Notre Dame has shown that it can beat Kentucky randomly. That's all. Just on a random game. Rutgers has at least beaten real people multiple times. So I know there's somebody listening probably who said, hey, I thought you said when they lost the Big Ten tournament, you didn't think they were going to make it. Yeah, that's exactly what I said. I didn't think they would make it. As we got to Selection Sunday and I started getting to the bottom of the at-large candidates, you got to, as they say, you got to put 68 teams in this thing. As I started comparing Rutgers to Xavier, to Notre Dame, to Dayton, to any of the other teams that were just on the wrong side of the bubble, I thought Rutgers ultimately ended up measuring up fairly well relative to the other options.
My last thing on this, I saw there was a comment that just hopped in the chat a little while ago. By the way, if you're watching this live or after the fact, please do hit that thumbs up like button. Get us some engagement there. We appreciate you. And if you're listening to this episode, this is the first one you've gotten to. Thanks for stopping by the Eye on College Basketball podcast. We've got a ton coming for you, and we really, really appreciate you. We can't wait for this tournament to get started. Someone had mentioned in the YouTube chat that when I mentioned the process wasn't entirely broken, they didn't like the way the committee's comprised. We don't have to do a segment on this. I completely agree with you. I've written about this. I talked to Tom Burnett about it earlier in the year, actually, for the podcast on the YouTube channel. I have long maintained that there needs to be diversity of thought on this committee. It is only made up and only ever has been made up of athletic directors and conference commissioners. It's not good enough, in my opinion. You need objective minds who are dealing that know basketball, also know analytics. Let's just get a bunch of different people on the committee. NCAA has no interest in doing that. I'm not hopeless that it'll never happen, but it's not happening anytime soon. And frankly, it's going to have to take a bracket that gets even more screwed up than this for there ever to be changed. But maybe one day, eventually, there will be.
And one thing to point out, and this is how conditioned folks are, they got Murray State out there celebrating a 7 seed. That's still too low.
I would have had him as a 6. I will say this. You're right. I would have had Murray State on the 6 line, but it was refreshing to see. Okay, at least they didn't put him in an 8-9. At least you put him on a 7. Maybe that speaks to just general expectation of committee behavior.
But that's where we're at. That the teams outside of the power structure are so used to getting screwed in the seeding process that they celebrate something slightly better than what they thought they were going to get, even when it's not what they actually probably deserve. But like you, my big complaint last season was they took Loyola Chicago, a top 10 KenPom team, and put them in the 8-9 game, and that screwed not only Loyola Chicago, but Illinois, which was a 1 seed. And we all remember how that played out. When we had Jerry Palm on last week, one of the things I said was just keep them out of the 8-9 game. Like, if you want to make them a 7, make them a 7. I'd go 6, maybe even 5. I think I might have gone 5 if you put me in charge. I could have argued it, but like 6, whatever, at least a 7, because you got to keep them. You don't want them you don't want a 1 seed having to play a Murray State team that's like never loses in a second round game, because you're screwing Murray State, but you're also screwing that team. You want to pop around the regions a little bit?
Yeah, we'll pop around the regions. And again, though, I want to remind everyone, because listen, again, this is a lot of people come to this podcast specifically. We're going to give you our impressions, but we are going to have region by region breakdowns on Monday. And then we will still have another, like if you want a huge, here's what we love, picks galore, we're going to have another standalone episode dedicated to that later in the week. We will absolutely have you covered. And thank you again for stopping by. GP, what corner of the bracket you want to start with?
Well, before we get to it, let me remind you that if you need help filling out your bracket, CBS Sports HQ got you covered with nonstop coverage of every game from every region of the NCAA tournament. Norlander was in studio all night tonight. I will be on, I believe, at least 3 times tomorrow. So go ahead, start streaming CBS Sports HQ 24 hours. It's the 24-hour home of CBS Sports. We're going to be on basically all day, every day between now and the end of the NCAA tournament. So here's the truth. I haven't even filled out a bracket yet.
Same.
I'm so busy. But I do have a live bracket up here in front of me. So let's just start in the top left, and that is where Gonzaga in the West region is the number 1 overall seed. My initial impression was that I thought Gonzaga didn't get – and listen, somebody's road to the Final Four is never actually what you think it's going to be on the night of Selection Sunday. So we spend all this time going, man, they've got a tough road, and then – New Mexico upsets UConn or Vermont upsets Arkansas, and the road doesn't look nearly as tough as it did on, the night the bracket was revealed. But Gonzaga's got a second round game, assuming it doesn't become the second 1 seed to lose in the round of 64, a second round game against either Boise State or Memphis. So your second round games possibly against the Mountain West Conference regular season champ and Mountain West Conference tournament champ, and that's a 4-bid league, or a Memphis team. And I don't know if you saw Sam Vecini tweet this on Saturday night after Memphis beat SMU, but if you go to Bart Torvik and run the numbers since the day after Imani Bates stopped playing basketball, Memphis rates as the second best team in the entire country, behind only Gonzaga. I'm not saying they are. I'm just telling you that's what the numbers say at barttorvik.com, according to our former colleague and forever friend, Sam Vecini.
Shouts to Torvik. That's a heck of a stat there. Yeah, listen, Gonzaga's going to have an interesting one because it's either going to have the second best team in the country. We're going to have 1 versus 2 in the second round.
This is turned around, hasn't it?
It has. Oh. So we're either going to have 1 versus 2 in the second round going down in Portland. That's a great venue, but I've covered tournament games in Portland before. That'll be great. Or, by the way, Boise State's coached by Leon Rice. Yeah, like best of friends with Mark Few, former Gonzaga assistant. They are thick as thieves, and so that'll be interesting to keep an eye on there. Georgia State is a 16, mildly surprised me. I thought they might line up as a 15, but whatever. Congrats to Penny Hardaway on getting this team back to a 9 line. You know, we buried them. I buried them midseason, and they rallied big time there, and they wind up as a 9. Boise State as the co-champions of the Mountain West and the conference tournament, only getting an 8 there. Mildly surprising. Feels like it should be a 7, but if I'm going to say it's a 7, I got to put someone down to an 8. And of the 7s that are out there, I think I actually would have bumped Ohio State to an 8. But so it goes. Right below that, and shouts to Nada for zooming in on this bracket. If you're watching on YouTube, obviously that certainly helps, and people love to see the bracket as we talk it out. UConn against New Mexico State, 5-12. These are going to be in Buffalo, and then Arkansas against Vermont. Oh, by the way, Vermont is a 13. UVM fans will make that drive. It's a little bit of a drive, but it's not that bad there. I get the sense one of these 2 games is going to wind up a double-digit seed winning. Now, I'm still going to have faith in UConn. And again, we're not going to peck through the whole bracket here. We will do that later, but just kind of first impressions. UConn, Arkansas would be a whole lot of fun, and man, that'd be a tough one to pick. But Vermont against Arkansas is going to be interesting because Vermont just blazed through its league tournament. Vermont's now 59th in KenPom. John Becker's team has 1 loss since December 7th, and it was an overtime by 1 at Hartford. UVM has made the tournament before. We're familiar with this team. But there's never been a team at UVM that's been as highly ranked as this since the team that won in the NCAA tournament in 2005, but it only got to that point by nature of its win. UVM was not ranked as high as it is now when it entered that NCAA tournament there. Keep that in mind. Intriguing little double set. If you're going to be in Buffalo and happen to be going to those games, you got a pair of nice ones there. Arkansas, Gonzaga in the Sweet 16, if we get to that point, could be a bunch of fun. And Huskies versus Bulldogs could also be pretty good. And what are your thoughts on the bottom half of that top left of the bracket?
A little surprised Alabama got a 6. You know, it's just they've really struggled down the stretch. But whatever, they'll play the winner of Rutgers Notre Dame. The interesting thing about Gonzaga's bracket, and again, like in the second round, they either got the Mount West champs or a Memphis team that has performed at an elite level since Amani Bates stopped playing. After that, Arkansas just had like a 14-1 stretch in the SEC. That's a real team. Connecticut is somebody I suggested could be a dark horse Final Four candidate, a month ago. They played well down the stretch. That's not a gimme. And then at the bottom of the bracket, Texas Tech has beaten 1 seed Baylor, beaten 1 seed Kansas. Texas Tech's shown the ability. They're older. They're great defensively. They've shown the ability to beat elite teams. That's kind of scary. And then Duke, and I know Duke has limped into this bracket, and we spent a portion of this episode explaining why Duke shouldn't be a top 2 seed, but they already beat Gonzaga once on a neutral court early in the season. It's not crazy to think that they could do it again. So I do think Gonzaga will get to the Final Four again. That will be my pick. But, and I guess this goes without saying, they got some really interesting obstacles in front of them starting in the round of 32.
Agreed. Quickie, I'll piggyback off that. One more thing, if you're a Gonzaga fan and you're a little spooked by this, I understand it. I wasn't aware of this until Hakeem Dermish, fantastic HQ anchor, brought this up on the show. Gonzaga's got Duke and it's got Bama in this region. Both those teams beat Gonzaga earlier this season. Right. And oh, by the way, Texas Tech has knocked Gonzaga out of the tournament in recent years. So if you're a Zags fan and you're waiting to kind of win a national championship, you're looking around, maybe you're getting a little bit of the shivers just seeing what schools are in this. As for the bottom half, yeah, I will be there in Greenville. So Michigan State, Davidson, Duke, Fullerton, in addition to another part of the bracket we'll get to in a second. I'll obviously be following Duke there. Duke goes to Greenville, and you've got Michigan State, Davidson. Foster Lawyer Special used to play for Michigan State, now plays for Davidson. Kind of cool. If you are a conspiracy theorist, I cannot emphasize enough to you how much the committee does not care that Foster Lawyer used to play for Michigan State and now plays for Davidson. I cannot emphasize it enough.
No, I saw some of that. Listen, I love that Foster Lawyer is going to get to play against Michigan State. Like the idea that Foster Lawyer moves the needle at all from like most people have no idea who Foster Lawyer is. No right? Like
no shot, dude. He was a role player at best at Michigan State, and now he's found a nice little niche for himself at Davidson. Trust me, they aren't finagling anything. Now, as for the Coach K Izzo, there's a lot of really good coaches in this tournament. And yes, Izzo is really there with almost any of them in terms of legendary status. And that's kind of on that like 7 line. I hear you, whatever. I tell you what, I think Mike Krzyzewski would rather face Tom Izzo than Bob McKillop for a couple reasons. I don't have the stat off the top of my head, but Coach K's got like an 85% win percentage all time against Tom Izzo. Michigan State's up and down. He would rather play the 7 seed there than the 10 seed Davidson, which has tried to schedule Duke with regularity over, the past 10, 15 years. Now that the teams have played plenty over their history, but eventually, like Mike Krzyzewski knows the deal. Bob McKillop's a really good coach, and if he doesn't have to schedule Davidson, he's not going to do it. They might wind up having to meet there, and you'll have like a little bit of a cousin to the Illinois Loyola Chicago deal last year. Either one's going to be fascinating. Got to figure Duke will get through Fullerton. They got the wipe clean. I was in the building on Saturday, Barclays Center. It's amazing, by the way. Like, I love conference championship week. And I had an amazing conversation one-on-one with Mike Young after they won. It was incredible seeing Virginia Tech's in the field. And like that stuff gets put in the rear view so fast because this tournament is such a behemoth, as it should. But it's just funny. Like, I was loving everything about this sport and conference tournaments. And now it's just like, whoop, okay, that's behind us now. That's way behind us. Duke's 0-0. Can it recover from really just getting sliced up by Virginia Tech? Either way, Michigan State or Davidson will be plenty intriguing there. And I like the West overall. Very tasty corner of the bracket. I think it's either between the East or the West for my favorite regions.
All right, so this will transition well. We'll go down to the East, and now it's bottom left on your CBS Sports bracket, and that is where Virginia Tech got placed as the 11 seed in the East Regional. First game against Texas, and we had Chris Beard, the Texas coach, on CBS Sports Network tonight, and I just sort of went back and looked at his Texas Tech team that went to the title game, and they were 9-1 heading into the NCAA tournament in their previous 10 games. They had lost in the Big 12 tournament, but they were 9-1 in their previous 10. Right now, Texas is 0-3 in its last 3 games, right? And Virginia Tech just won the ACC tournament. And so I asked Chris, like, do you even believe in momentum? Like, been playing well down the stretch. Does any of that stuff matter? Because he's already established himself as one of the better, if not among the best, tournament coaches. He's got a 9-3 record in NCAA tournaments. And he said he acknowledged that the way you enter a tournament could be a factor. He said, and I'm paraphrasing here, he's like, they don't put any extra points on the scoreboard, to start it. We're going to start 0-0. We've lost our last 3. They just won the ACC tournament. It will be 0-0 when we tip off. But he did acknowledge that, his team has lost 3 straight games, and Virginia Tech's really playing at a high level with a lot of confidence right now. And that might show up. Baylor obviously is the 1 seed in the East. Second round matchup would be against North Carolina or Marquette. Those are 2 teams that have had moments in this season where they looked really good. Marquette went on a 7-game winning streak in the middle of conference play in the Big East. You cannot go on a 7-game winning streak in the Big East without beating good teams. Carolina went on a nice stretch to close the season. Obviously beat Duke in Mike Krzyzewski's final home game inside Cameron Indoor. I think Baylor should be fine in the second round game, but both those teams have beaten teams that are close to as good, if not as good as Baylor at certain points this season. Marquette won at Villanova, North Carolina won at Duke. If you could do those things, you can beat Baylor in a neutral court situation. A little bit further down, St. Mary's is the 5 seed. They'll play the winner of the first 4 game between Wyoming and Indiana. UCLA and Akron. And then you get Texas, Virginia Tech, Purdue, Yale, Murray State, San Francisco, Kentucky, St. Peter's. So you mentioned that we could have a Davidson Duke situation. We could also have a Kentucky Murray State situation.
We absolutely could. And again, we will go into these brackets and regions even deeper on our region by region preview episodes, which will go up throughout the day and evening on Monday. Big picture, 10,000-foot takeaways from this corner of the bracket is I feel like a lot of people are going to take Carolina to beat Marquette. And in many years, it feels like there's an 8-9 like that, and it goes the other way. So just buyer beware on that. Marquette's got some good wins. I know they haven't been hot as of late. People are going to be feeling UNC after the Duke win. I haven't decided who I'm taking in that one, but that one smells a little funky to me. Wyoming, if it can beat Indiana, I like Wyoming almost. I think I like Wyoming more than Rutgers or Notre Dame to be the first 4 team that gets into the second round. That has happened, I think, every year except one, that a first 4 team wins at least 2 games. And Wyoming St. Mary's might be a first to 50 wins kind of deal there. Virginia Tech over Texas is the most obvious 11-6 on the board as far as I'm concerned. Yes, even more than Michigan over Colorado State. Part of that's because Texas has been so erratic, and Virginia Tech's obviously looking as good as almost any team in the country heading into this big dance. I took Virginia Tech on HQ. I don't think I'm going to step off of that. I will go with the Hokies there. I actually just like the way that they I like everything about this matchup for Virginia Tech. Purdue seems like it's weirdly hiding in this part of the bracket, by the way. So 3 seed is going to play against Yale. I think that's a good matchup for Purdue. But it's hard to say who's going to. I could see. I mean, I'll be honest, GP. In this part, bottom half of the East, I could see Texas, Virginia Tech, Purdue, Murray State, or Kentucky being the team that makes the regional final in Philly there. Murray State, San Francisco, by the way, Todd Golden sent me a text because they made him sweat when we were doing we cut into CBS's coverage when we did the selection show on HQ. And so my mic's off and we're on the air at that point, but I'm like, it's because when it was Texas, I was like, this 11 is probably going to be San Francisco. And then it wasn't. I was like, if San Francisco is not this 10 seed, like clear the set and give me a 10-minute monologue because it's going to be the most egregious snub ever. And Todd Golden, this is an exact quote. He said, "Holy crap, dude. I went into this show with 100% confidence, and then I was sure we were left out in that last part of the bracket. My stomach was absolutely sick. San Francisco is dancing for the first time since 1998. And of course, you got 2 great young coaches, Matt McMahon, Todd Golden. They'll both be coaching at a power conference level eventually. Could be a few weeks, could be a year, could be 2, but they're both on their way there. I don't know. I'd love to know the process and how we land on 7 Murray playing 10 San Francisco. Why can't we go 7 Murray playing 10 Miami and 7 USC playing 10 San Francisco? Why can't we do that? I don't get why it's got to be 2 mid-majors playing against each other. Now, that said, it is. When I saw it, I knew it immediately. That is the most must-watch game of the entire first round. It's the game. If you want to know when that game's being played, it is a 9:40 tip on Thursday, CBS game. They're going to be playing that in Indianapolis. Iron Eagle, the great Iron Eagle on the call. Can't wait for that one. Murray State versus Kentucky will be fascinating as hell, but either of those teams getting Kentucky in the second round. I really like UK. I got them ranked 3rd in my 1-68 rankings up on the site there. But, man, you can make a case, GP. I know Duke's got Davidson, Michigan State, and we'll get to what Auburn and Villanova could have waiting, but you really can make the case that when you look at the 2 potential options, not just one team, but like, okay, the 7 or the 10, I think Kentucky as the 2 has the toughest prospect of a second round matchup if and when it gets there.
To the South region, which is, if you're looking at CBSSports.com's live bracket, going to be in the top right corner. Arizona is the 1 seed there. Villanova's the 2, Tennessee is the 3, Illinois is the 4. I think Arizona, of all the 1 seeds, I feel safest about them being in the Sweet 16. First game against Wright State, next game against Seton Hall or TCU. I think Arizona's got the easiest path to the Sweet 16 and maybe to the Elite 8 because theoretically a Sweet 16 game would be against either Houston or Illinois, although I won't rule Jelly Walker and UAB out.
Well, I mean, I don't know, man. Houston, Kelvin Sampson. I hear what you're saying, but it's still Kelvin Sampson made a Final Four a year ago. Illinois in the 4 line, and these teams played each other earlier this year, and Arizona, Illinois have some tournament history. I don't know. I think that we have some work cut out for them. We got to see how healthy Kirk Crease is too. That's a factor.
Sure. I think the latest reporting is they hope he will be available, for the NCAA tournament, but hope's a long way from I'm certain he'll be available. That is a factor, although, they just won the Pac-12 tournament, beat UCLA without him. But, Houston, anybody who listens to this podcast knows how much I respect Kelvin Sampson. I think he's one of the best 5 to 10 coaches in college basketball in terms of just give him a roster and he'll make it good. But like he lost 2 players in December, and I think that started to show up as the AAC schedule unfolded. They got beat twice by Memphis. They did then beat Memphis in the American title game. So, that was impressive. I just think that they're going to ultimately be a player short somewhere along the way. Like I would be more surprised by Houston beating Arizona, eliminating Arizona. I'd be more surprised by that than I would be UAB upsetting Houston.
Feel like Houston losing to UAB might be a bit trendy. I like Houston there. Very fun region. I love this corner of the bracket there. On the bottom half, we talked about Tennessee plenty. Colorado State, Michigan is your first tip at 12:15 on Thursday on CBS when we get to the first round proper. So that's going to be what everyone's tuning into to start. And I'm sure Michigan's going to have be picked plenty in that. Colorado State's just a more dependable team, although that's a contrast in big. So you got David Roddy, small ball 5, does everything against Hunter Dickinson. Those are two players designated centers that don't look the same and don't do the same stuff. So I love that matchup there. How about Chris Holtmann, man? He's the 7 seed and he's got to face Loyola. The lines were obviously not out when the bracket got revealed. I said it on HQ. Loyola is going to be a favorite in that game, and sure, lo and behold, it is. It was 1.5 when I went off the air. I don't know if that line's going to move by the time people listen to this on Monday or not, but that's a case where I don't have an issue with Loyola on the 10 line. There's one thing for what you did on your resume versus what you are in the metrics. And we caped up for Loyola Chicago last season. We said it was underseeded. I'm fine with it being a 10 this year. It's just a bad break for Ohio State. You lose as a 2 a year ago. You want to at least get a win and kind of atone for that. Now you go up against, frankly, just a really, really tough matchup there. So we'll see. And Ohio State's still banged up. It doesn't have a full roster available. But I believe it will be in a better spot by the time it's got to play that game. And then, Nova, Delaware. Nova has a 2 there. No huge issue with me overall. I could see Arizona, Villanova, Tennessee, Illinois getting out of this. I could see any of the top 4 being the representative out of the South when they get to New Orleans.
How about this? At the end of our bracket breakdown show tonight, final block, CBS Sports Network, I think there were 6 analysts, me, Wally Zerbiak, Pete Gillen, Chris Walker, Shelvin Mack, John Rothstein. And, it's just, we got 90 seconds left, and Brent Stover and Adam Zucker tee us up on pick to win the national championship. 4 of the 6 said Arizona.
Too trendy. It's getting too trendy, my man. It's getting too trendy.
I said Gonzaga. Chris Walker said Kentucky, or Shelvin Mack said Kentucky, and I believe everybody else said Arizona. So, take it for what it's worth. This region's tough, man. You've got the Pac-12 tournament and Pac-12 outright champion in Arizona. You got the AAC regular season champ and tournament champ in Houston. You've got the SEC tournament champ in Tennessee and the Big East tournament champ in Villanova. So 4 of the top 7 or 8 conferences in the country, their tournament champions are in this region.
Feels noisy to me. Feels like a noisy one.
Let's go down to the Midwest. Kansas is the number 1 seed. Auburn is the number 2 seed. Wisconsin is the 3. Providence is the 4. And you mentioned that you thought Murray State San Francisco was the must-watch game of the round of 64. I counter.
This is the number 2. It's the number 2.
Providence against the South Dakota State Jackrabbits. Ooh. Imagine you're Ed Cooley, lead your team to first ever Big East regular season title. Now you got to mess around with some Jackrabbits. What? Jackrabbits ain't lost since December 15th? You got to play Jackrabbits?
They should not be on the 13 line. Did Providence dirty with this. South Dakota State's a 12. What are we doing? Put Richmond on the 13. That's just a bad job. That's just lazy, in my opinion. That's a lazy move by the committee.
30-4. Haven't lost since December 15th. Top 15 in offensive efficiency, according to KenPom. Number 1 effective field goal percentage in the country at 59.7. They shoot 44.2% from 3. Tops in the country. That's what you're dealing with. That's the Jackrabbits.
What a fascinating game. If you're wondering when this one's
Just
going,
realized it's midnight. I'm just yelling in my hotel room.
absolutely wonderful. We couldn't love it more. We could not love it more.
I mean, like I'm sure I've got like business people in the room next to me. Like probably got a meeting at 9 a.m.
Yeah, it's all good. Hey, by the way, Thursday is fire start. Get this, because I was looking where this Providence game was. You start at 12:15 with Michigan, Colorado State, CBS. What the hell is this game doing? And then the second game is South Dakota State Providence. What the hell is this doing on True TV? What are we doing right now? They put this on True TV?
Well,
what are we doing? 12:40 tip.
Let me tell you the secret about television. It ain't teams. It ain't matchups. It's brands. Brands, that's what people watch.
It's Jackrabbit's brand, damn it.
So where did you say Michigan was on CBS?
Well, you already know. Yes.
That's why. That's because it's Michigan.
Exactly. No doubt about
Big
it.
brand.
And then the third game. So you got Michigan, Colorado State. 25 minutes later, South Dakota State, Providence. And then an hour later, Memphis, Boise State. What an unbelievable first window that is. Fourth game is Baylor, reigning champs, playing Norfolk State. That is a great start. Yeah, that's a wonderful matchup. Iowa is the 5 there. Iowa versus Providence or South Dakota State. I'm here for it. Richmond. Maybe the Spiders can crawl one more time into playing a little bit beyond that, but I'm not seeing that one. San Diego State, Creighton might be first to 52 wins. This is the best defensive team it's had. And San Diego State, it feels like the more trustworthy team in that spot. But Craig McDermott's done a wonderful job. Replace the starting 5 to get to a 9 seed. Great stuff this season. Bottom half, you've got LSU, Iowa State feels like the toughest 6-11 to pick. Oh, by the way, Will Wade got fired. We don't have time to do all the coaching stuff. I got a text, I think 10 minutes before the selection show, said, hey, just so you know, Mike White is going to Georgia. And I could not, I would, story for another time, but Will Wade got fired.
Well, let's spend a few minutes on this, because when Will Wade gets fired and when Mike White leaves Florida for Georgia, immediately people go, why? Why? So let's start with Will Wade, and we'll be real quick on this, and then we'll get out of here. Why now? That's what everybody says. Well, because they got the notice of allegations last week, and they were not in the complete clear to fire him for cause until he was charged with a with a level 1 violation in the notice of allegations. Now, they could have just fired him for cause and said, come fight us. And he could say, well, I haven't been charged with anything yet. And they say, well, we think you're going to. So, so let's get on with it. I guess in theory, they could have done that. But this one wasn't hard to figure out. The notice of allegations came last week. It buried him. He's been charged with lots of level 1 violations. He's trying to buy, what's the number? 7? Yeah. 7. He's accused of trying to buy or buying multiple prospects, trying to pay people to not talk, using money out of a joint account with his wife. He roped his wife into it. Allegedly. So once that allegedly, just trying to keep us out of court, dead leg. Just trying to keep us out of the legal system. So that seems obvious to me. They finally had everything they needed to do it, make a clean cut, and so that's what they did. With Michael White, this is the same thing Shaka Smart did last season. The exact same thing. You can come back. Florida's not going to fire you, just like Texas was not going to fire Shaka Smart. You can come back, but you're on the hot seat, and your fans don't even really want you there anyway. So it's going to be a miserable existence. Trade that in for fresh expectations, brand new contract, restart the clock on being on the hot seat. Yeah, let's do it. And I know somebody said, well, the difference is Shaka Smart went from Texas to Marquette, and Michael White went from an SEC school to an SEC school, from one rival to the other. And I hear you, but Michael White did the same thing Shaka did in this sense. Just took the best job he could get. What's the best job I can get right now if I want to get out of here right now? For Shaka, it was Marquette. And for Michael White, it appears it was Georgia.
What a move by Georgia and Mike White getting this right before the selection show, because, buried in a bunch of other news there. And, tricky one overall. Bottom half, yeah, the Midwest overall, just real quick on this as we wrap up with all the coaching stuff. LSU, the players don't have their head coach. So I don't know how to. LSU Iowa State is an underwhelming game. This Midwest region is just, I'm not going to say it's meh. I love every bracket. I love every corner. But again, Kansas to me has the easiest way to get to New Orleans there. And then the bottom two games, I'm going to be there. Those are Greenville games, USC Miami, and then Auburn Jacksonville State. If you are looking at this bracket and find the least amount of enticement in this corner of it, I'm kind of with you there. But Kansas, Iowa, Sweet 16 could be a lot of fun. Maybe Auburn finds life again. That's a really, really fun team when they're really going there. We'll wait on Wisconsin. Wisconsin, Providence are the two teams that have outperformed what the metrics say they should be. So we'll see. We could certainly have plenty of upset noise in this part of it as well. But I'm just glad the bracket's finally here, man. And again, we're going to have plenty. We're going to dive into these even deeper, but we wanted to just give you a quick overview of what we've seen here. We'll make picks and all that. I haven't even filled out my bracket. Got to do that. I haven't picked. You said you picked a champion. You picked Gonzaga on the show. I figured.
I can pick my Final Four right now if you're prepared to.
Do it. I will not be, but I absolutely tell the people. Who do you got?
I'll go Gonzaga as a 1 seed out of the West. I'll go UCLA as a 4 seed out of the East.
Look at you.
So Gonzaga, UCLA rematch in the Final Four. I'll go Arizona, 1 seed in the South. And I'll take Auburn, the 2 seed in the Midwest. Championship game, Gonzaga, Arizona. Mark Few against Tommy Lloyd. And your champion, Gonzaga.
I don't have it yet. I'll give you a. Okay, you got enough spice in there. I like that, GP. I'll commit to Kansas coming out of the Midwest. I'll commit to that. So we'll differ there. I just don't know yet with these other teams. I just don't know yet. I literally have not had time to actually sit through. I picked the first round games on HQ every region, every segment, but I haven't gotten there. I will. I'll mix in my picks. I actually got to get him up for the site here. I think I'm going to call one of our editors on my drive back home, and I'm going to literally talk my way through this bracket driving home, which is going to be a hell of an exercise there. But those are brackets. As a reminder, CBSSports.com on the CBS Sports app. All of our picks for the bracket, Final Four, National Championship. We also pick every game straight up and against the spread. You can see the records. Those who have been listening all season long, Final 4-1. We know how that goes, but we'll keep you updated here with all of that. And plenty more coming in terms of NCAA tournament stuff. But Selection Sunday is here. It is, GP, it's just great to see you. Great to talk to you to kind of wind down the day. It was a marathon past few days from games to coaching news to all that kind of stuff. And then today today was absurd college basketball wise. And then everything that happened off the court, but brackets here, tournament as we speak right now, it's now Monday. We've crossed the midnight hour on the East Coast. NCAA tournament technically starts tomorrow.
Hope everybody enjoyed my lighting and my makeup tonight. You don't get this every night.
That's right. Looking sharp.
Yeah. I feel sharp. Shouts to Devin Downey. Shouts to Chester, South Carolina. Shouts to Alex Holcomb, 6'9" legend. Actually averaged 19.3 points for Baylor in the 92-93 season. Second round draft pick. Shouts to Larnell. Thank you guys once again for listening to the Eye on College Basketball Podcast. The middle of the dumbest pandemic of my lifetime. If you're not subscribed, please go subscribe anywhere you subscribe to podcasts, including Apple Podcast and Spotify. Over at Apple, not only can you leave 5 stars, but you can also leave a nice review. You can write words. Do that. There's more of us than there are of them. And please subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't yet. Easy to find. Just go into YouTube. Hey, YouTube. And get into the search engine and type in Eye on College Basketball. It'll pop right up. Every time you're watching an episode, smash the like button like you're Brandon Davies. We will talk to you again really just a few hours.
Trust me, have the podcast feed locked and loaded. We got stuff coming for you. We're gonna feed the beast, feed the machine, and we will absolutely talk to you soon. And thank you to everyone who tuned in live to watch us late on a Sunday night. It was great to be with you.
4 regional previews will be recorded on Monday. Plus, I think at least 3 hits on CBS Sports HQ and a 2-hour radio show, all before I fly home. Don't really know how I'm going to get it done.
I'm going to go home and write. I think I'm writing about the West region. I got to write that. So, yeah.
It's a hell of a time, isn't it?
It really is.
We'll talk to you again on Monday. Till then, take care.